Greetings and salutations. Ben here, Ryan there. Y'all right about everywhere. Welcome to the Sunday night hanging right here on, well, Sundays, because
what is going on?
It's easier than trying to figure out a new name if I went live on a different night of the week. Welcome all as y'all roll on in here. We'll get to roll call momentarily. Have a long overdue welcome to our good friend Ryan from the OhYouAteOne2 network of stars and cavalcades and
the OU crew.
The guy who decided to raise the fucking bar.
Raise it all up, man.
That's what you're known as, the guy who raised the fucking bar. Because
nothing wrong with that.
JJ and I last week were discussing, for years, there was if there was a way we could like jam, if only we could do that, blah blah blah. Well, part of it, we started that conversation. At least for me, it was in 2018. I'm like, I don't have the bandwidth, dude. Like that's not an option, and a lot of us didn't. But as things progress, and all of a sudden, Ryan has to say, we're gonna play to a backing track, and we just give her full send over top, and it's gonna be awesome. And we're like, you can't do it. He said,
man.
Hold my performance-enhancing beverage, Trev.
Yep. And we kind of stumbled onto it, I had all this gear, and I was like, I need to find something I can just plug it all into and then shoot it into the computer. So I took a chance on the Rodecaster Pro 2 that everybody knows that I use. It's got 4 XLR inputs, 4 microphone inputs. And hooked up my 3 cabinet mics and then a vocal mic. Started playing to a backing track, and I was like, "Hey, yeah, that's gonna work."
So I remember, one of the first times I heard it was we were doing an off-air hang. Remember one night, and Charles like, "Oh, you gotta hear Ryan's setup. You gotta hear it." And I believe there may have been a drunken John DeShane involved too. He said, "Yeah, he's got the Trans-Trem. You gotta hear it." I'm like, "I'm aware. I did a show with Dave Nesdall for a number of years. I'm aware." But I was like, all right, and I just remember it was like a circus trick. You would use it, and John would be, do it again.
Right. Play, monkey, play.
Yeah. And I was like, damn, that sounds good through there. I'm like, okay. Excited. And then figure out how to put a track into the Rodecaster, and that was the key. No one knew about these Roadcasters now. Everybody, they should be kicking back some money to you. I'm just saying.
You know what? I wouldn't say no to it for sure, because I think that I have helped sell quite a few of them. So
I'm thinking at least half a dozen just off the top of my head within a minute.
At least. So, well, I mean, I know that Jimmy got one, Randy got one, John got one.
Yep.
Matt McCullough got
Matt
one.
may have. We don't know. Matt is so digitally inclined. He may have already had one, but he didn't know.
Yep. Did I say John? John got one.
Yeah, John definitely got one.
Who's the other guy that does the show over there? I can't remember his name right off, but a couple people have gotten one for sure.
People,
yeah.
And now I'm seeing like more and more people. That is the go-to setup, as opposed to I stumbled into just a USB mic and just playing the cabs loud and capturing the room, which happened to work for but I can't play with people. That's
yeah. What I was finding that was happening was a lot of times that, I would just have like your standard, little one, what were those things called? The little small ones with the one input.
Focusrite.
Focusrite, yeah.
Yeah.
So you would have like an amp or something with a digital out, and you would go into that thing, and then you'd try to play a track on your computer and play to it, and it would sound great, through here. But then when you tried to stream it, the track would be like 2 seconds behind what your guitar was, and it just didn't work. So that was one of the things with the Rodecaster, was actually being able to put the track in where all the same guitar input is coming in. So then everything
then you're pre-mixing it before going out to the world, essentially, or to
everything just mixed together properly, and it was perfect. And then for whatever reason, when we started doing it online, it just seemed to work. I mean, there's a little bit of a latency from on a replay. If whoever's hosting the track, they're going to be right on. Everybody else, you might hear just a millisecond.
All the more reason to tune in live.
But exactly. But otherwise, it's been doing pretty good.
We got 48 crazy folks in here. We should get to some roll call here.
Right on. Should be a bunch of people.
First in the chat, I don't know. Some guy named OhYouAteOne2 says, "Who the fuck is OhYouAteOne2?"
Right. Remember the shirt?
That's
that
what we
Eddie
all
had?
tuned in to find out.
Right.
Then we got Earl. Earl, yeah, it was cool. We saw Earl yesterday at the Water Buffalo meeting.
Earl already knows what I'm drinking, so.
I got an A&W root beer, Earl. Little conversational lubrication. L Bar J is here. Dastardly Dave. Of course, Ferd Burfel.
Right on.
Glenn Michael Thompson. Unfucking believable. Graphite and Cigars.
Cool.
Bunch of familiar names. Michael Krause is even here. Great to see. Great to see Michael Krause. I see Michael Krause. I don't know about great. No, it's actually good to see him. Hip Metalworks is here. Great to see Hip. They're all saying hey to each other because they're social that way. Actually, we hadn't started yet, so what else are they going to do? Greasy Monkey Guitars. Great to see Dave.
Greasy.
There's Brian from Searching for Tone. He was a minute early. It was a really short search because he found us because we have the tone.
We've got it.
No need to search any further, Brian.
You have found it.
Just saying. Bare minimum, I do stereo. And then Brian's like, you know what? Let's just expand upon that a little third dimension. And we're like, all right. I have no problem with that. I suppose at some point I should go wet, dry, wet. It's not like I can blame lack of amps. So I suppose a fella could.
Might as well just plug in a couple more of them.
I did buy a replacement fuse for the B52 a year ago. I could just probably put it in and see if that fixes it. I assume that's what it was. There's Chris Hill. Welcome, Chris. New name in the chat.
Chris, welcome over from our channel.
Awesome. Michael B.
Good to see you,
I
Michael.
would say my favorite masshole.
Right.
I swear that's the best part about living in Massachusetts. You get to call yourself a masshole. Because then it was like, what do you mean it's such a jerk? I'm a masshole.
Masshole in the closet, under the stairs.
Perfect. It's the ultimate. Just free dibs. There's Richard Nagamitsu. Great to see Rick. Our in-house amp expert, Jim, JP Page 2. Charles 75N, Dr. Fabric.
Charles.
Of course, brother Trev, producer to the stars. Well, it's us.
See, if I'd known that Charles wasn't going to do a show because he didn't have a guest, I would have done the trifecta today. Would have gone on his show, done my show, and then come on here,
All he has to do is reach out once in a while.
Yeah. Just ask a fella.
Yeah. Lots of us. Happy to do it anytime.
We got nothing else
Brody's
to do.
Jam Cave is here. He's been putting out some cool stuff. There's Mark Taft. Mark Spurgeon. All the Marks. Billy Baloney. He got defrocked. I guess he's no Sir William Bologna the Third. Just same old Billy. That's cool. Marcel LeBlanc.
Was it?
I guess the C is silent. Is it a hard C or a soft C? Nope, silent C. What? Joe McGraw. Great to see you, Joe. Dan of New Jersey.
What's up, Dan?
Guitar Band 45. Great to see Bo. Much more people talking to each other. Dave Chase. Great to see Naked Dave. Well, it's great to see Dave. Not so much the naked part, but it's great to see Dave. From the neck up. It's fine. It's fine. Sun's out, Dave's out. Jay Steen. Great to see Jay in here. There is Matt from McCullough Music lurking with horns.
Hey.
Charles Green. Great to see Brother Charles.
Mr. Verde.
Nice. Blue Mox.
Blue.
Rob Blackmore Official.
Robbie.
All the cool kids are joining in tonight.
Yeah, man.
I'm just saying.
Should have a full house.
Dan Gorman. There's Brandon B. Squared. What's up, butt cheeks?
Butt cheeks.
Hell of a show last night. Just saying. Hell of a show. What, if any show went out with a bang, it was that one.
I just had. Oh, well.
There we go. People say, I'm louder than you, so I'm bringing up your volume. There we go. Is it better now, folks? Yes.
Check. 1, 2. Check.
I can go more. Just let me know, folks. BC Rich 581 is here. Cushman NYC.
Kush.
Scrolling. More chat loading. Martian Murray, who's neither Martian nor Murray, but we still like him. I'm not sure why he lives in Texas. I thought he should be in New Mexico. Just saying. But hey, what do I know? John Landino's here. Great to see John. Eston Ray made it. Jeff K. Zach Thong. Now it's a party because Zach's here.
All the cool kids.
There's brother John. John DeShane. Martin Lemaire. Playing baseball watching. Yo, everyone. The Hobo Roadie in the house. Awesome. Way up, dude. What's up?
What's up, way up?
Let's go for a Fender and a Gretsch. The Gretsch burns longer. I think so. I would say no, the Fender, because the Fender's solid. The Gretsch being a hollow body, they go real quick.
Pretty quick, yeah.
Ooh, Arf, Ben and esteemed guest. Ooh.
Let me
fancy.
Straighten my tie.
Right? There we go. Hey, we're all caught up. Didn't even take 15 minutes like Charles.
Right on.
I waited 5 minutes before we started. Whoa.
Well, good to see everybody. All the familiar names and those that I am not familiar with. It is good to meet everybody.
Yes.
I am.
And if you haven't already checked out,
Ryan.
Yes. If you haven't already checked out his channel, there is a link in the description down below. I actually remembered for once to do that. Just saying.
Well, I appreciate you inviting me on, Ben.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to lie. I kind of, enjoy your tone. And that's the big thing with me. It's like, I don't care, what kind of guitar someone plays or what color their t-shirt is. But if you got good tone, then we can be friends. But if you have bad tone,
not so much. Yeah.
It's like, really? I'm like, do you hear what I hear? And they're like, yeah, isn't it great? No, it's not.
Yeah. Let's see. Marcel LeBlanc has a question for me. He says, have you ever worked in radio or other form of entertainment, including but definitely not limited to a nudie bar DJ? No, but I would be open to that opportunity. Yeah, just if you know somebody,
bar DJ.
Call me. No, I have not ever worked in any type of radio entertainment. I did, some bands, just kind of for fun on the side. That was the only form of entertainment that I've ever done. But no, never any voice work or definitely not.
And for bands, is it more original covers, both?
Yeah, a little bit of both. Back in the 90s, I came in to fill in for a guitar player that actually was replaced, and they had just put out an album, and they had some tunes that had acoustic guitar in it. So I was kind of the stage guitarist, would come in and I would do acoustic. And then since I was there, I would go ahead and do rhythm guitar and whatnot. And then did some cover stuff with some bands. Mm-hmm. And then most recent band that I was in was back, 2010 to 12, 13, something like that. And it was all original. So we had a CD that we had put out, and we're going to make it big, kind of thing. But no, we ended up having lead singer disease with that. And the band kind of dispersed at that point.
That was the lead singer that thought we were most likely to make it. I'm like, dude, you're pushing 50. We ain't going to break big.
Right. Yep.
My whole idea was go for it, hoping that with the original music, you play in front of the right people. You get the guy from here at Sony Canada. It's the only label really still in existence. And they come up and they go, we got these young guys, but they can't play worth shit. We want to buy one of your songs to turn into a hit with them.
Right.
And I'd be like, do I still get songwriting credit? Yes. Fucking done.
Yeah,
I know. Sure. That's going to pay for a new backline for me.
Mm-hmm. Well, my thing was, if something happened with it, that would have been great. But I was there just to play. I just loved to play. Loved to get on stage and play. Yep. Just the feel of the music, the guitar hitting you in the back, moving the hair on your legs. And
that was 13 years ago.
So. Right. Like David Gilmour used to say that it was just like being able to lean against the wall of sound behind you. That's just what
playing
I loved.
Playing at pants-shaking volume.
I was happy to go and play for a basket of chicken fingers and French fries. So I wasn't
Which
about the
playing
money.
original music is, yeah, that's what you get, basically.
Yeah.
You know? Like, all you get, I love it, was we're playing for a share of the door. There's 4 other bands, and you're playing in front of the 4 other bands and 5 other people.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. We had a couple of good gigs with some good turnout. There was a place that was called Sweetwater Live here in the Atlanta area, and had a really, really good show there with another band. So yeah, some good times, some good stuff.
Yeah, I really enjoy it. And going out, it's an adventure. They're playing with different, especially the multi-band deals, which a lot of with original music, it's like, you know, you're the out of town band, so you're the headliner. We're like, oh, okay, because it's 4 local bands and you, because we'll drive an hour or 2 to play. And we're like, sure, because we're out of town, we'll probably sell a couple t-shirts, a couple CDs, you know, whatever. Cool. Let's do it. And you hear a bunch of new music. And it was interesting because everybody was either like myself, I was in my early 40s at the time. So, which was that, like, a bunch of kids are grown or old enough to take care of themselves. So dad band is original music. And they said, screw it, you know, and get back into it. And then a bunch of kids, basically, like late teens, early 20s, which is awesome too. And so you get that really cool mix. And same as the crowd would be the same, because there'd be guys our age out there still rocking it. And Steve Cassidy, guitar in the house, got to shout him out.
Steve, what's up, man? Good to see you from across the pond.
YouTube. Just saying, the best ginger in YouTube. Charles, get Steve on if you haven't already. I just said, because lifestyle choices. I may not remember.
Well, with the time difference,
Bo says I'll be 29 this year again. You right. Hanging out with all girl punk bands, you will be 29.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or dead. One or the other.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's take a pool on which one will happen first.
Yeah. I recommend vitamin B over cocaine at our age. I'm just saying. Less likely to have the heart attitudes.
Nothing stronger than gummies. So.
Yes.
So what's been going on in your world, Ben?
Summer has arrived this past week, and I found out my central air no longer works. So that's my week. Yeah.
How? I mean, I kind of know a guy who's in that industry. So
the outdoor compressor unit doesn't seem to be kicking in.
Gotcha.
So
not at all. Nothing happening.
Or something.
I mean, we could diagnose it right now on the show.
Yeah. Quote mobile mo with the phone.
Right. Yeah.
That's when you're typing the chat. Ben can't see the chat. I'm going to tell him to cross these 2 leads to give him a nice little shock. But it won't kill him. But it's going to be hilarious as hell. Watch this.
Yeah. Watch Ben's hat fly off when I tell him to touch these 2 wires.
Yeah, so hopefully just something like failed capacitor or something. So
yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I'm a summer person, so I got all the windows open, and it's like 76 with a breeze. I'm like, I love this time.
Throw some fans on. Good shape.
Yeah. Until 5 years ago, I lived in an old farmhouse that didn't have AC anyways. So I'm
kind of used to it. Yeah. I'm just watching all the chat over here.
Let's all go back to the 80s. Sure. Well, you know, funny way up dude says that because a fella dug out his cassette collection this past week. So I have been reliving Teenage Ben's albums of choices and such. So a lot of
remember?
A lot of Van Halen.
Do you remember the first cassette that you ever bought?
The first cassette I ever bought. Ooh. That's tough because I'm trying to think of the first one I bought new because I got a lot used to start with, but actively remember, like I got, let's say, half a dozen used ones somehow, some way, but going out, I just discovered AC/DC. I borrowed a copy of Who Made Who from a buddy, right? And I went, oh, how come that one song doesn't sound like the other singer? You know, he goes, oh, you used to have another singer, right? I was like, oh, okay. So I went into town and I picked up High Voltage and Back in Black together. I thought we'll start the journey of both singers right there.
Nice.
And yeah, like 11-year-old Ben was in hog heaven.
Well, I had an older brother. He was 2 years older, so he already had the Van Halen cassettes and all that stuff. And so I think that my first cassette that I bought may have actually been Chicago. Was it Chicago 21 or something like that?
Okay.
And I bought it along with, it must have been the Miami Vice soundtrack with, In the Air and Glenn Fry.
I remember that.
Yeah.
That was a big album.
Yeah, it was a really good one.
Hell, the theme song alone was a hit.
Yeah.
And it was enough that they did a volume 2.
Yeah.
But then again, there was it was weird. Like they would do like song placement. Like songs would be written either specifically for the show or they debut it on the show.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at you, Glenn Fry, with your Smuggler's Blues.
Yeah. That was my introduction to Jan Hammer. And I was like, this dude's pretty cool,
Right?
So getting into kind of the synth stuff. And then I didn't buy too many cassettes. It just immediately changed over to CDs around that time as I was coming up and buying stuff. And very first CD that I ever bought, I still have. It's right here. It's OhYouAteOne2. Thus, my name, OhYouAteOne2. In case anybody's wondering.
My lovely sister Amanda.
Hey, Amanda.
Rick says he used to babysit kids our age. Well, there you go. For me, it was interesting because, growing up small town anywhere, pre-internet, you're at the mercy of the radio to find out about most music. Unless you had cable TV and had the music stations, which weren't free, which we didn't have. So, and around here, most of the radio, it was country or AM radio hits. So it's like you would hear certain rock bands, but it would be their ballads only that you would ever hear.
Mm-hmm.
Like Doctor's Waiting Room, soft rock type thing. So you'd hear all the Phil Collins and stuff, but didn't know anything about this harder stuff. But then it was talking to classmates at school who had older brothers, and okay. And then I want to say it was like grade 4, grade 5. That was a big deal. And then I started making money cutting grass, so I had money. But I'm in the country, Ryan. How am I going to get my hands on music? Ha ha! Columbia House. That's how I get my hands on music.
Right.
I went from having none of the cassettes to all the cassettes.
Right. Have 4 or 5 different names and accounts that you send in a penny and get your.
And it was funny. I was saying it to Ken the other night. Usually it was 10 for a penny, but every once in a while you see an ad for 11.
Right.
Some TV Guide was the best. They would do a 12 for a penny, and I was just done.
Two bonus.
Buy your first one for half price, and we'll give you 2 more free. I'm like, well, I got to buy 8 anyway, so mazel.
Might as well.
Go and get your money order for $3.50 or whatever.
I wonder how many people still owe money to those places.
Right? What's up, Dimebag Coins? Welcome back.
That?
Cool Tunes Made Easy. I think I ended up being clear with them, but I was with them up until CDs. Even just half the time, I found their cassette quality was better. It was a better quality made cassette. So, and their albums were heavier, like more grams of vinyl in it or whatever. So,
I can remember that my dad bought the Sony rack system that everybody remembers from the 80s. The silver had the dual cassette, and then it had a CD player, and then it was the turntable. And that was my first experience with the turntable, because he had some old records that he wanted to be able to play.
Right.
He had his Marty Robbins and all this old Western stuff, which I've got that album upstairs. I can remember the one song that he would always play. Out in the West Texas town of El Paso, I fell in love with a Mexican girl.
Oh, I know it well. I have Marty Robbins' greatest hits on cassette. I found in the collection, which was my dad's.
I still remember that to this day. And I was surprised at how much better like a vinyl record sounded with the setup that we had. CDs sounded great, cassettes sounded great, but there was something different about a vinyl record. And so we wanted to get some records, and our parents took us in the first record that they let us buy as kids. I was number 7 of 8 kids. So there was a lot of diversity in the house with the type of music that everybody listened to. But we had seen, I think it was, they saw the video for Weird Al Eat It, the parody for the Beat It song, and they thought it was humorous. And there was an album, so I can't remember what the name of it was. Weird Al in 3D, I think it was. and it had Eat It and I Lost on Jeopardy and this kind of, but it sounded fantastic on vinyl.
Huh?
So that was kind of my first introduction to records.
Now, if I go back a couple years earlier, my first vinyl was Michael Jackson's Thriller, because me, like a quarter of the world between 1984 and 85 went, gotta buy it. And that was my introduction to pop music. And then growing up with my dad playing country music at the same time. Hey, Metal Maestro. I knew I didn't like country. I knew that much. But every once on TV, you'd hear this heavy rock guitar thing, and then it was like listening to some of the tracks, and then when you realize it's basically Toto with Michael Jackson singing, is the Thriller album with Lukather all over it, and this guy named Eddie Van Halen doing the guitar solo, which I don't know any of this, but I was just like, I don't know what that is, but I like that. That's catchy. I like how that song, like, who's the back band, that plays.
I was into Van Halen at that time, and it's funny because that song came out on the radio, Beat It. And I'm listening to the guitar solo, and I'm like, is that? Like, it couldn't be.
Right.
And I kind of recognized, I'm like, is that Eddie? And it turned out that it was.
Right.
There's a
and if I didn't say, and you just see Steve Lukather's name, like, okay, sure, because I could see Quincy Jones do an Eddie type solo. Luke's like, fuck it, okay, I can do anything, and does it, type thing. Luke's Luke, and it'd be 9/10 of the way there, but no, not quite.
It's
up, Steve Franklin.
It's a big album for sure. Uneffin' Believable is asking Ryan, V-shaped necks, yes or no? For me, no, can't stand them.
There you go. Me, yes.
I tried I was looking for a telly-shaped object, and I've purchased a telly-shaped object, but I wanted to get an actual telly. And I was in my local Guitar Center, and they had a Brad Paisley Telecaster, which I didn't know who it was at the time. But I was like, well, that thing looks pretty cool. It's relicked up, and I'm like,
one?
It was one that it had a front pickup, but it was underneath the pick guard.
Okay.
So I'm playing around on it, and I'm like, how in the heck are they getting sounds out of this in a up position and there's no pickup? And I realized that it was underneath the pick guard. And I actually purchased it, brought it home, and I tried to get used to that neck, and it had a V neck on it.
Right.
It went back a couple days later. I just couldn't gel with it. So no V neck for me.
Yeah, I do enjoy all the Paisley things he's done over the years. And it's not that I'm a huge Brad Paisley fan. I really agree with him on a lot. Yeah, sort of like Richard. It's like I remember playing the one that came out I think before that, which was the Silver Sparkle made in Mexico with just the Paisley pickguard. And first of all, I picked it up and it weighed like 4 pounds. I was like,
yes, okay. Super light. Yeah.
And then I plugged in and it's got more spank in it. I'm like, oh no. I'm like, I did not need to play. I'm like, I fell in love with it immediately. I was like, oh, I need this in my life. And
yep. I think
it was a little too pricey. And then I was offered it 2 months later at less than store cost because someone needed to make a mortgage payment. And something screwed up that all of a sudden he didn't have the money type thing. And I was like, well, that's weird because I know he's a decent business owner. But he says, yes, I fucked up. He's like, you can have it for this. I'm like, oh, for fuck's sakes. Because it was like, it was short money. I was like, I don't have the money right now. I wish I knew.
Yep.
Yeah.
It was a great guitar. And like you said, it was real lightweight. And if that neck had just been a little bit more my feel, I probably would have kept it.
Like that. Unbelievable says V-necks are like the middle positions. And Charles replies, so they're perfect.
So I guess he agrees then. No V-necks. Right. Yeah.
It's interesting. Thinking of Van Halen, first exposure for me was, I think it was just before the Jump single had come out. It was right around the same time. I'm going to say same summer, but older cousin was visiting my grandfather, left a cassette behind. Ooh, another cassette. Just homemade. It wasn't even a commercial. So it was Van Halen, Diver Down on one side. Couldn't even tell you the band on the other side. And I couldn't tell you because it was written in pencil and was barely legible when I got the cassette, and within no time it was worn off. And I put on Diver Down. There's some weird shit on that album. And and the only song I knew was Pretty Woman because my dad played it for fuck's sake, and I'm like, this does not sound like Roy at all. I'm like, this is a really cool version.
Right.
And Dance in the Streets. I'm like, what is going on with the guitar? I could only assume it was a guitar.
Yep. The old cover tunes.
Yeah.
Album. Yeah.
Which, and then I just made me a fan of Van Halen's cover tunes ever. I was like, so then I was always looking on the older albums for any cover tunes because such a unique take on how to play them. And then 1984 came out. And I'm like, ooh, they're like, here's the new Van Halen video. I'm like, oh, this is going to be so weird. And I get to see what they look like. And I'm like, what the hell is with the keyboards? Oh, no. It's right around the same time Rush released the Big Money video. And they put the mullets and the sports jackets with the pushed up sleeves and the keyboards. And I went, oh no, Van Halen went keyboard band like Rush. What is the world coming to? 10-year-old me was already losing his shit, Ryan. It's just like,
and little do you know that keyboards were already on a lot of the earlier stuff. Right. What is that? Cradle Will Rock was, the Wurlitzer keyboard, through his Marshalls. So, right. I mean, he was already doing the stuff.
Yeah.
Richard Nagamitsu loves V-necks.
He does.
Still waiting for a Baja. Nice.
Yeah, see. Let's see. Charles says, "Hot Move, Pink Floyd's The Wall, but on LP." Sure, I get it. Richard's number one is the Strat. Number one Strat's 2015 American Deluxe with a soft V. Nice.
I think the first vinyl album that I obtained for myself, I didn't purchase it. I actually won it on the radio. You were talking about radio stations. We had two when I was growing up. It was a 94 QID, and then it was Rock 107. And 94 QID was giving away tickets to David Lee Roth for his first tour after he left Van Halen. And, be caller number 10. So I got on, started dialing. You're not caller 10. You won the ticket. So awesome. So I went down and got the tickets, and they said, "Oh, with the tickets, you get this album." So it was the Eat 'Em and Smile album. So that was the first vinyl that I procured for myself. I wasn't able to go to the concert. I had to sell the tickets, but I kept the album.
Oh, Charles, thank you, sir.
Awesome guest,
because awesome guest, awesome show. Thumbs up, folks, please.
Right on, Charles.
You rock, Charles. I know, Bo, you've seen Rush a gazillion times, followed them everywhere.
Uneffing Believable dove deep into Dave Clark 5 and the Kinks because of Van Halen. I checked out the Kinks because of really got me, but Dave Clark 5 I had actually heard before I'd even heard of Van Halen mention them or any relation that they had listened to them. I really dug the tune. What's the one? It's just real jazzy and Somebody's got to know the name of that one.
Yeah.
That was cool.
I was familiar with both. My parents' records were basically early British Invasion up to the Beatles just turning into hippies. That they basically stopped in the 60s, the end of the 60s into just early 70s, maybe they stopped collecting vinyl. And then because you can tell because by then they're living on their own, they didn't have as much liquid income. And then shortly along, I came along. So yeah, then there was no albums being bought for the most part.
Who do you feel maybe some bands that are really popular that you feel are just overrated?
Overrated?
I mean, I'm probably going to get some enemies when I tell you my two, but
The Doors.
Okay. So top two overrated bands that are really popular. I figure being a Canadian, you'd say Rush.
No, I like Rush. And I'm on a Rush kick these days, so I can't say Rush.
Well, most Canadians are like, that's
Canadian
all that they played here.
I hate Nickelback. Always did. So produced. Yeah, other than that, that's a good one. Overrated rock bands. I just never got into. Well, I was never really into the Eagles. I like Joe Walsh. I don't like the Eagles.
Okay. Take Five. Take Five. That was the name of the tune, I think, that I was trying to think of. My two, and again, everybody's going to send me hate mail after this. Two bands that are super, super popular that I cannot, well, I wouldn't say can't stand, but I think they're way overrated. The Rolling Stones. I actually change the channel when they come on the radio. Charles 75 knows it. He says, wait, not love for the Rolling. That's right. And the Beatles is the second one. I mean, I can respect what they did, but the music for me just doesn't do anything.
No, I do dig the Stones. That one.
Now, the Beatles, if they come on the radio, I might listen to it. You know, they got a couple good songs. But they
got a couple good.
They got a couple good ones that I personally like. Yeah, but Rolling Stones, if they come on, I change the channel. I don't know what it is about them, but
Ronnie Wood is my spirit god. Now,
there you go.
He's not on a lot of recorded Stone stuff. You know, all their hits was pre him joining the band, but I just love Ronnie Wood to death. His whole career, from Faces into the Stones, Rod Stewart's solo stuff. Most of that was written by Ronnie. Keith alone is worth it. Well, yeah, Keith too.
BC Rich says, never really liked the Mick Taylor era of the Stones.
Wow. No, that's kind of their best stuff, in my opinion, BC, but sure.
See, Michael Krause says, you can hate the Stones, but you had better turn up Sympathy for the Devil, the bass line. That song in particular is one that I change the channel as fast as I can. I cannot stand that song.
I'm not a fan of Sympathy for the Devil either. I'll be honest with that one. Boaz, Ben, did you go see Triumph with the Oilers? One, Bo, I would have told you about that. Two, that would be going to a playoff hockey game, which I would hate to think what the cost of tickets are. Three, it was in Edmonton, which is about 2,000 miles away. You're much closer. And three, no, I did not. But I did see photos.
I like Paul Morgan says, so the two most popular bands in rock history are overrated. LOL. In my opinion, in my personal taste, you know, that's why I said I'm going to get some hate mail, but that's okay.
Not the biggest Queen fan.
I'm not going to change the channel if they come on.
Yeah. Depends on the song.
You lost like 20 viewers when I said
I hated Bohemian Rhapsody, and then Wayne's World came out.
Right.
You know, and then all my friends are like, no, we're not.
But it's so popular now.
Yeah.
Let's see.
I could have carpooled with Pete Thorne to Edmonton. Exactly. Thanks, BC.
I think that I was.
Thanks, Bo. Yeah.
I got when I was younger. I got into there were many great tunes and bands and stuff that I like to listen to. Dire Straits.
Oh, love Dire Straits.
Peter Gabriel, Genesis, all this, all the stuff from the 80s. Pink Floyd, Stevie Ray Vaughan back then. All that kind of, I really, really appreciated all that music, but there were a few bands that I really got into, and I think I was kind of, pigeonholed into a lane of these bands, and just everything else didn't compare to, what I thought were these really awesome bands. One of them, obviously, Van Halen, big, huge Van Halen fan, and Pink Floyd, and Zeppelin, so anything else just kind of didn't compare to what these bands were, the type of music that I was really getting into and grooving with. So for the longest time,
Led Zeppelin, my God, that was like I was fanatical all through the 90s about Zeppelin.
Yeah,
that was my thing. Oh, I got Jimmy Page's guitar tattooed on me, for fuck's sakes.
Yeah, growing up with a lot of diversity in the house, my sister she'd dial the phone to the radio station. She says, request this, because she was too shy to get on the phone. Sure. Request this song for me. you know, she was into Rush and, you know, all that type of stuff, which was good stuff. But I kind of pigeonholed myself into a few bands that I really, really liked. So, you know, you guys can rebuke me if you like.
More in the 80s than the 90s, because you're young. Like when I was really young, like it didn't matter. Like I liked all the pop music. I liked all the rock music. You know, I liked all the AOR stuff. You know, it didn't matter to me, especially if I had a guitar. You know, that's what, like Duran Duran. Love Duran Duran because I love Mick Taylor's guitar tone, because it was like pop music with a fucking guitar. You know?
Yeah. I guess the way that I categorized it at that time, now that I really, really think about it, was who was I buying the music of?
Sure.
Because, you know, I didn't have the money to buy the album of everybody that was out. So
sure,
if I liked them enough to buy their albums, you know, that was my groove that I was in. Yeah.
That was me with Columbia House. The initial thing, just once you had the booklet, I'm like, back catalog of a band. You know, like, here's your 10 choices. The guy, fuck, he wants nothing but Kiss. All right, you know, there's their back catalog.
See, I've completely forgotten about Kiss. That would be right up there in those overrated bands for me. Just
overrated. I could say that, yes.
Just keep sending the death threats.
Really is one of the reasons I picked up a guitar.
Right. Yeah.
You know, it was the smile on his face, same as Eddie. The smile on their faces, like the two of them. Like nobody looked like they're having more fun on stage than those two guys. Of course, most of them both were high as fuck while doing it on stage.
Right.
I didn't realize was part of it, but hey, you know, that's all part of being in a rock band. Sure.
I saw somebody say that the other day that nobody seemed to be having as much fun as Eddie Van Halen. But, you know, I can think of watching different guitarists, and I can see, as a guitar player myself, I can see the joy, even though they're not jumping around on stage. But like, you know, Angus Young.
I'm like, Angus Young. Who's having more fun on stage than Angus?
But, you know, when I went and saw Pink Floyd in concert, you know, David Gilmour stood in one spot and played, but I could see, you know, the feel of what he was doing coming through him and through his fingers, and you know, because they got the big huge thing, and you could see close up of what, and everybody's able to go on YouTube now.
They always played like they were on stage, but they're still in the orchestra pit in a way,
right?
Like they're like, we're just part of the experience. You're like, nope, we're here to see you dudes, you know, like. But I get it.
GNC, two bands that could go away and my feelings not be hurt. Foo Fighters and Metallica.
I liked Metallica until Cliff passed away.
Metallica was one of those bands that when I was young, it was like, it's a little heavy. That's one of those, you know, really, really heavy bands, but got to listening to them and had an appreciation for what they did, for sure.
Yeah, by the Black Album, I was out, and it just blew up so big, and it's like, where's the speed? Where's the thrash? Like, I just kept remembering, like, as Lars used to do, there's a little drum fill he would do when they were about to pick up the beat and like double up the speed. Like, and I'd hear that in the Black Album several times. I'm like, oh, here we go. Nope. Oh, here we go. No. Nope. It was like a girl getting ready to flash me for fucking 45 minutes and never did. And, you know, and I remember that because a buddy went out, we pulled an all-nighter playing board games because it's that long ago, Axis and Allies all-nighter. He gets up first in the morning, runs down the record store to buy the Black Album. They're already sold out on CD, so he bought it on cassette. And we sat there and listened to it. And when Eddie's like, let's do it again? I went, nope. I'm gotta use your phone. I'm gonna get a ride home.
Yeah, all good.
He's like, really? I was like, yeah. I'm like, at least on this album you could hear the bass. All the bass all of a sudden. Went from none of the bass to all the bass.
John says,
Purple says, am I the only one who dislikes David Lee Roth?
You know, I'm a huge Van Halen fan. And
I like pre-1987 David Lee Roth. Let's go with it. I'll give him a bit of the solo career, but after that, like now, I'm sorry, right? But with his scat thing, and it's just like and people are, oh, saw him last year. He's singing better than ever. I'm like, I haven't heard David Lee Roth sing in 15 years. Mm-hmm. He talks.
Yeah. A huge Van Halen fan. One of the biggest Van Halen fans. And when he was replaced by Sammy Hagar, I really didn't care, So when he came back on the, the 07, 08 and all that, I wasn't impressed with his vocals. So John says some bands are just overexposed.
Well, there is that.
Chris says, dispel the myth that tone is in the fingers. It's the heart. I would agree with that.
It is. I've played through enough people's rigs to know it's me. Fuck.
Yeah.
It sucks.
Yeah. We went on a guitar safari with, we went up and met, Andy Carson up in Tennessee, Chattanooga area. Right. Me and Randy went up there when Trev was doing his 9-hour marathon on our channel.
Okay. Yeah, because I caught the beginning of that when you hung at Guitar Center there, which was, that's a nice Guitar Center, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. And I think it was Randy. I plugged into a little Fender or something or another that I've got here of Mustang something, and I dialed in some effects and started playing, and he goes, yeah, sounds like Ryan, Right. And then he would play, and I'm like, yep, sounds like Randy. It's the same thing. So it definitely is, coming through you. Amanda says he's gross. He's always been gross.
She's not a fan of David Lee Roth.
Right. Metallica concert was crazy. Yeah, Randy went this past Tuesday to the concert. Had a pretty good time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, look, they had some decent seats.
Yeah, I think he was club level. He was talking about if anybody goes to see him.
If get me as close to the railing, where I can still sit and enjoy. I don't need to stand at a rock concert anymore. Right. I'm not a teenager, especially if there's any kind of shenanigans going in front of the stage. Like I'm too old to mosh. Fuck that shit. I'm going to be the guy at the fringe going, stop.
Yep. I'm the guy that throws his back out getting out of bed, so I'm not going to go down on the floor and get get into the pit. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm good.
Bird says he didn't care for him when he could still sing. Richard Nagamitsu says, what's your main amp these days? My main amp is the EVH Stealth 100 watts, 6L6. I do have the EL34 version and the OG version, but the Stealth just really does it for me.
Right. It's the main source of the tone, as they say.
Yes, sir.
Charles says, thank you. Thank you for what you have brought to YouTube. Much appreciated.
Right on, man. I appreciate everybody that's been supporting us and coming and watching us. And,
honestly, I think what that brings to the table, okay, you get people, it's inspiring people. I know that. Because they'll watch, either whether they want to join or they just want to have the ability to do that, even on their own, because we're all at stages in our guitar journey.
Right. Nearly every show I see somebody in the chat's like, I'm going to start practicing and start getting some gear and maybe try to join you guys. And so, yeah, that's what it's all about, man.
Remember, Stephen Franklin, welcome.
Right on, Stephen Franklin. Good dude right there. Stephen Franklin is sponsoring a giveaway that we're doing on our channel.
Oh.
He's donated quite a few things. So for anyone that's subscribed to our channel, we'll have some stuff to give away. But we're saving the grand prize for our channel members, which he sent me a Boss GT1000 pedal that he wanted to help support the channel and sponsor a giveaway. So be looking for that over on our channel.
That's like all the Boss effects.
Yep. I've been trying to get some time to get it out of the box and test it out, but very, very generous of Mr. Franklin. Cool dude there. Really good dude.
Well, I want to thank Charles for putting the link to Ryan's channel in the chat on occasion. Appreciate that.
Appreciate it. Richard is asking, with the Stealth, do you attenuate or do a direct feed live? No, it's not attenuated. I do play at it's basically a bedroom volume in here. So a signal goes from there.
Which is answered Chris's question too. He's like, "What try what? Explain it. Signal path, whatever."
So you don't mind if I take a minute just to kind of show what's going on?
Well, you do. I'm just going to spin up a handheld forest fire because lifestyle choices.
All right, so I'll move out of the way a little bit. So this head and that head are just for looks over there right now. They're not doing anything. So the main.
Okay. I didn't even see the rack unit over there.
Yeah, the main head there, that's the main tone. So this center speaker, it comes right off of there, and that's dry. That's all we get.
Just had a Whalen phaser full.
So then it's mic'd, and I get a dry signal over here on one channel. That's it. Off of the back of the head, there's also a speaker tap that I take over into, I actually have my spare one right here. This is the Palmer Junction. It's a PDI-09. They make a new one now, but it's basically a DI box. Mm-hmm. And this has the same, I feel like it has the same effect and tone of what Eddie was using because he used a Palmer load box.
Right.
So this has a speaker emulator built into it, and I typically will run it on normal for the speaker emulation. So it takes that signal, and that signal then goes and feeds to my rack unit over here. There we go. So it feeds into the first unit, which is a Lexicon PCM70.
Where have I heard of that before?
Which is the same unit that Edward used for Cathedral and whatnot.
That's how.
And the reason that this one is special, the PCM70, is you got mono input and then it splits its stereo out. So the stereo out of the Lexicon then feeds down into my Rain mixer, which is right here. So it feeds 2 channels. Mm-hmm. And then the Rain mixer then sends signal up to the Eventide Eclipse right here, which is always set to micro pitch. So you get that detune +9, -9. Mm-hmm. And then it also has a signal from the Rain mixer to each of these SDE 3000s. Mm-hmm. One of them is set to 250. The other is set to 500. Mm-hmm. Or I'll set it to 400 and 800, depending on what I need.
Big delay.
So all of these effects, these 3 effects here, are then mixed back parallel. So they're all running side by side of each other. And then they will go finally into this sonic maximizer here, which I can kind of tweak the highs and the lows, for what you hear. I can kind of balance those out. And then you can't see it under here, but there's a little power amp. It's a Carvin DC 120, I think. Okay. And it's running with a 16 ohm speaker, probably 80 amps aside, or 80 watts aside, I mean. Okay. And so that feeds stereo into this cabinet and then the other cabinet back there. And then those, of course, are mic'd. And then so the 3 mic signals all come here to the Rodecaster. And that is
that, folks. I hope you're taking notes. We're not explaining it again.
Yeah, that's it. That's
it. So, all right, I need to go back in the chat here. And my sister, we're together earlier this week, and she's like, "Who do you got on this week?" I said, "I got Ryan on." She's like, "Oh," and she's like, "I think I'm subbed to him," and she checked it out, and she's like, "Oh, I'm not subbed to him." So she had subbed to you earlier this week.
Nice, right on. Thank you.
Tom keeps messaging me, but Tom, I'm busy doing a show. You should be tuned in and watching. Just saying.
That's right, Stephen.
Cool. All right, thanks, Charles. That's
all fun. Into the Rodecaster Pro 2.
Of course, Bo has to mention he's got 4 Lexicons. Great units.
If you got some PCM 70s, let me know. I need a spare.
And Rob's like, "Ladies and gentlemen, Brian Eno." I know. It's a rig. Michael Kors has old PCM 60.
Yeah, those are cool.
Sweet setup.
Thank you.
Zach says, Ryan, I love everything you guys do, and hopefully one of these Saturdays, that's right, I will try to jump on and play with you guys. I think that would be fun.
Right on, man. Absolutely. So, yeah, anybody that's not familiar with our channel, we had been doing Sunday community jams, and anybody was welcome to submit something that you recorded. We would play it, or if you wanted to jump on and play with us live, we'd ask that you send us an email, and we would send you a link. However, we are now moving to the PM section of Saturday with the community show. So that will be more of an open panel where we'll have a link pinned in the description. And of course, any ladies that want to jump up on panel, they'll take precedent. But guitar players next. So anybody that wants to jump up and jam with us, we'll have that open. So if you can get tone into the computer and you got a camera, come and join us on Saturday nights, 9 p.m. BC Rich 581 says, I just dial in periodically just to see the Trans-Trem. Now, everybody should be familiar with what Trans-Trem is, right? It's a he, she, they, them guitar. But it's got a what's called a Trans-Trem bridge. And this was developed way back in the 80s by Ned Steinberger. I think he first released it, 84, 85, something like that?
Yes.
But you've got various spots that you can lock the bridge into a different tuning. So it's actually designed...
Fancy capo is what it is.
Basically, yeah. So it's a capo kind of built in automatically to the...
Of course, that's not what Eddie did with it.
Right. He used it the right way. So
yeah.
You can take and you can lock it up to a different tuning. So that went from an E to, what is this, F? F sharp, maybe? Yeah, that's F sharp. And then I can go up again. So that's G. And of course, that's where Summer Nights is. And, but yeah, the whole guitar stays in tune as you change the pitch of the bridge. So really, really cool piece of gear for sure.
Cool piece of gear.
Yep. I've gotten to where I'm addicted to them, and any guitars that I buy now, I'm like, it's got to have a Trans-Trem on it.
I get it. Having been part of the Van Halen realm over the years, it's one of the reasons I got into YouTube. I could say is because of Eddie, simply because I remember I came across a couple of guitar-based live streams. They were live like once a month, once or twice a month. And I'm sitting around on a weeknight. I think it was on a Friday night, and I'm like, I do a search for guitar live streams. Hey, Fruitcake Tony, hell of a show last night, man.
What's up, Tony, man?
Legend. And I did a search for I think I was just searching around for some Eddie Van Halen stuff, like interviews or whatever. And it came up live stream Eddie Van Halen, and I went, you know what? I thought of all guitar players, there's more conversation. Like you can have more conversations about him than any other guitar player, and they only say it because one, hell of a guitar player, cool, okay. So as a guitar player, cool, signal chain. Then you got the band, cool. But then you got the whole EVH brand of instruments. So you talk about that. So, I was like, add them all up. There's more hours of conversation about it. So I tuned in, and fortunately they're into stuff other than just Van Halen stuff, or at least the one co-host was. And
yep.
That was cool. And met a bunch of these people in there, and it was Steve from Boston and others. And then I thought, wow, geez, I should do this too. And it was because nobody was live on Thursdays at the time. So I did a Thursday show, and then I had to switch it to Mondays because we were switching my band practice to Thursdays. But then the band broke up before we ever did a Thursday band practice, which
Right.
but it already announced everyone moving to Mondays, and
Right.
immediately you might understand this, right? Immediately, someone took my 8 p.m. time slot. Immediately,
Wow.
it wasn't you. It was
Who
some
would do
hack.
that?
I don't know his name.
Yeah, who would do that type of thing?
That was a hack move.
Well, see, that's the thing is, we've gotten so many people into this guitar community now, and still meeting new people that are just cool as hell.
Every day,
But we've got several of us that are doing shows. So, in order not to step on toes, I've always wanted, when I started my channel, I wanted a Saturday night show, but Tony had that spot. So out of respect for Tony's spot, we did the Sunday show. And so, all respect to Tony, but when he mentioned that he was not going to be doing the show anymore, I was like, okay, I'm going to get that spot, because you don't want to mess with the other.
Yeah, it's hard not to step on toes, and it's one of those things we're all kind of like this in a sense, because if we were able, if YouTube would agree and actually showed us the algorithm, like if we did guitar live stream, I guarantee there's probably 6 of us live at any given time.
Right.
But we don't know about it because it's not promoted that well.
Yep.
Or like how many people I'll meet that names for a while. They're like, "Oh, you have a channel? You put out content?" I'm like, "Yes, yes."
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For years.
Yep. Yeah, guys that I'm seeing come in, and yeah, exactly. Talking to them, oh, you got a channel and you got lots of content. Cool. I think Sean Hawkey is Searching for Tone. Those were a couple I didn't know.
It pisses me off that YouTube changed it around 2019. It used to be like with moderators, you can click on someone's name and choose go to channel.
Mm-hmm.
Used to be anybody could do that to anybody in any live chat.
Right. That
and
needs to go back.
It's funny because watching on replay, our friend Bruce, Mr. BHB, he's one of these guys. If he meets you in the chat and you're cool, he wants to sub your channel. Doesn't matter if you put out content or not. It's like a form of respect. It's adding a friendship, like adding a friend on Facebook. Same idea in a way. What's up, Dale Boyle Music? Great to see a legend.
What's going on?
Have either of you tried the MXR X100 Rockman pedal?
I have not, sir.
I have not, sir. What? Yes.
What's your thoughts on it?
It's good. It does the thing. Like,
yeah.
It doesn't need to do a lot of things. It really needs to do one thing.
Mm-hmm.
It does. It is noisy, but so is the original. So there is that. So if you play your deal with it. That's what they do. I do run it in stereo because why wouldn't you?
Why not? Right.
But,
so if you want to play Boston or Def Leppard, that's your pedal.
Yeah, for me it was the Def Leppard thing.
Right.
The stereo when I'm here. So yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, as far as gear, I don't really, I'm kind of stuck in my ways again. I've got my setup. I've got my tone.
Yeah, there he is.
Bruce, right on, man. Listening while getting really forbid, and I will listen something later.
Yeah, ready for bed, I'm guessing. Yeah.
Oh, gotcha.
He's always up early. There's D. White Bailey, the hitman himself.
Dwight. The hitman. That's a given. You got to do that anytime he enters your chat.
It happens.
I have backup of that. I've got it on here, and then I've got it over on a Stream Deck, just in case.
Just in case.
Over on something else when he comes in, I can get it over here. But as far as new gear, I mean, there's some stuff that comes out. I'm like, I'd like to try that. I've been trying to work on a B rig over on the other computer there. Mm-hmm. So I was trying some new gear and stuff. Soldano, I'd like to try that. What is it? The X88 IR rack unit.
Yeah.
I'd like to give that a shot. But as far as pedals and stuff like that, I'm kind of set in my ways, and I've just got a wah, phaser, flanger, and a tuner, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, well, because you got a modulation from the rack unit too on tap, mm-hmm. So it's like you don't need a chorus. You've got detune, which is same family.
Yep.
I won't say the same thing. Same family, folks. Easy.
Yeah, it's more of a widening effect as opposed to a
That's
chorus.
the way I run my
effect.
stereo chorus. It's the same idea. It just widens. Eddie Van Haskell in the house.
Right
Thanks
on.
to Eddie.
Joe says, what is the bridge locking R-trim system? It's not a Trans-Trem. No, the R-trim is actually one of the entry trims. And when they say it locks, it just means there's a little clip on the back that you can lock it so that it doesn't move.
Yeah.
But it doesn't do anything special. Actually, the R-trim is a piece of crap, if I'm being honest.
It's just, we like honesty. Yeah, I think for gear now, it's like very rare does a new pedal come out that I'm like, ooh, I gotta have it. And it's more even then it's refining. Like I had the Noble's ODR1 Mini that I got from was Dave Nesdall's, rest in peace, Dave. It was good, but it's kind of dark because that's what the Nobles are. And then Keeley brought out his version. I'm like, well, all right, snag that, and that went on the board. But other than that, or when the Rockman pedal came out, but nobody was expecting a Rockman pedal to come out.
Right.
Oh, well, I'm like, well, that's new. I don't have one of them in my life. Cool.
Right.
Now I don't have to get a vintage unit and hope it works. And then it's basically, unless Lawrence from LPD Pedals puts out something, I'm like, oh. But he's the type, hey, I just invented this. You're like, I didn't even know I needed that until you just made it. Thanks.
Right. Yeah.
Dick.
Thanks a lot. More money to spend.
Like his Bedlam. I did a Dumble. Oh, great. All right. Well, everything he makes is good. So I was like, oh, for fuck's sakes.
Charles 75N is asking me, is it hard to master the Trans-Trem? I would say so because I haven't mastered it. It's a feel thing. It really is a feel thing. There's certain guitar players that just do things naturally. And I think that, Eddie was a master at a lot of things that he just did naturally. And the Trans-Trem made sense to him. And he just was able to use it just naturally. For me, it is a struggle with the muscle memory, because as you use it and you're actually dipping down to get to a certain note, or you're pulling up to a certain note if you're not locking it in. So for me, it was just learning the muscle memory of the tension of the
bending note, I would think, right? Like, say you got to learn muscle memory to bend up a half step or a full step without over or undering it. I guess similar, but you're doing it with another hand. And
And I've been real familiar with the tunes that I've learned so far, so I kind of hear them in my head, and I'm able to translate it.
Surf Alien in here? What?
So I think that might be a better question to ask Randy because he's come over and he's tried it. Right. So you may ask him what his thoughts were. Me, I was, how sometimes you get something and you're like, I am bound and determined that I'm going to do this. There is absolutely nothing that's going to stop me from doing this. That's how I was with the couple of Trans-Trem tunes that I learned. I'm like, I'm going to learn this. There's nothing that's going to stop me. So I think a lot of it is the effort that you put into it.
And it is because it's not, you can't really half-ass it.
Yeah.
It's like you can do a solo, let's say 90% of the correct notes, and it's going to sound enough like the solo that most of us won't know. Mm-hmm. But if you're yanking on the stack, if you don't do it right, you're not in pitch. It's just ooh, did he just go out of tune? Like, no.
Or if you try to play a certain tune that uses a Trans-Trem and you don't use it, Joe Satriani, it just doesn't sound right.
If ever, I would like to hear Quentin do Happy Birthday on a Trans-Trem. Because that would be ungodly. Because nobody does Happy Birthday like Quentin.
Is that a good thing? Or
like, I don't know how you'd be like, you're like, no, it's specifically designed to not do what you're doing to it, Quentin. And then he'd get up and he wouldn't have pants on. And you're like, oh, now we have to delete the video.
Charles is asking me, is there an Eddie song you still struggle with? Yes, every single one of them.
Yeah, it's because all of them?
Yeah, all of them. Yep.
Pick. Dealer's choice.
Michael Krause says, surprised that the Trans-Trem didn't catch on with country players. Imagine some faux lap steel parts with it. Yeah, it would actually work for that.
When I forget what it was. It just hit me that one night, I think it was in Charles' chat. And then I'm like, isn't it just a glorified capo? And you're like, yeah. And I thought, I bet you that's what Ned had the idea, because there's a lot of like singer-songwriters that you watch over the course of the set. They might just be playing an acoustic guitar, but that capo is up and down the neck because it's easier to capo, say, at the 7th fret, because you want to fret the chords a certain way to get a certain sound.
Mm-hmm.
And so I understood the concept, but it was just, I think more people didn't embrace it outside of rock because Eddie went crazy when, it's like nobody was buying a Strat after Hendrix got huge because they were like, fuck, I can't do that. If I show up with, it's like showing up to a gig with a striped guitar now. You show up with a white, Olympic white Strat with a reverse head, people like, all right, play some Hendrix. Yeah, fuck you.
Right.
All right?
Yeah. Yeah, and if you got stripes on your guitar, you better know some Van Halen to play for sure.
You gonna play Eruption? See, I was the guy. Although it's funny, I never showed up with a striped guitar, but having shown up gigs with my Kramer, purely not out of spite, crazy, because we did like Tom Petty, REM, Beatles, The Who, and they're just like, guys playing Tom Petty on a Kramer. It's like, damn straight I am.
Right, yeah.
And they're like, why? Because I'm doing it ironically. Because the other guy's playing a jazz box in the band.
Yeah, I would carry my my 5150 replica, and we would play Panama. So you gotta have a striped guitar to play some Van Halen.
Yeah.
Chris is asking if I've done any upgrades to the Trans-Trem. My GL2T, which is that little guy right there, that guitar was completely rebuilt and refurbished by Jeff Babbitt's, the same guy that built Eddie's for him and refurbished his.
And is that the same Babbitt's Bridges?
Yes.
Okay.
So there was nothing I needed to do to that one. I do have a video on my channel of this guitar. I took this apart and I replaced what they call the pivot plate, or the main tone plate. So RWB is a company that's making a full Trans-Trem now. Nice. And they had some parts available. So I purchased one of their pivot plates. So that was the only upgrade that I did to this one. And this one, actually, I think sounds better than the one in the GL2T, but it's all subjective. A lot of fun playing on these guitars.
Nashville tuning. Ooh, you're pulling it up an octave. That's a lot. That's a lot of tension.
Well, see, the beauty of this is that you can actually calibrate it as long as you're in a certain range. You can do different tunings with it. I've got one guitar that I have. I've got it tuned to a drop D, and then when I change the pitch, it changes to a drop whatever.
Right.
Because it's calibrated that way. So. Mr. Franklin said, is that for sale? No, it is not. It is not. A lot of my other stuff will be for sale, but nothing with the Trans-Trem.
So you can use a Gretsch for hipster metal, ironically. Yeah. Hell, I played Motorhead on a Gretsch.
Yeah.
The great thing is you have all the sustain, because as soon as you stop playing, it turns into feedback. So you have all the sustain, basically.
BC Rich says, Buck Dharma still plays his cheeseburger Steinberger every night since '89. Have you ever seen that one? It actually looks like a piece of cheese.
Yep. I remember Jimmy Page playing Steinberger with the Firm. So, yes, him and Paul Rogers.
Could be.
It didn't last, that thing, because they're like, okay, you got to go on tour to promote the album. He's like, all right, I'm Jimmy Page. I'm going to party like I'm still in Zeppelin. Like, you can't do that anymore, dude. You're middle-aged and diabetic. The tour lasted 2.5 weeks. He was in hospital. It's like, yeah, that doesn't work, dude.
Well, back in the 80s, there were a lot of folks that tried the Steinberger stuff, Geddy Lee and...
Oh, the basses were everywhere.
Yeah, the basses were big.
Which I get. Like in today's day and age, for the amount of fly-in gigs, like all of our favorite bands now, for the most part, nobody's touring. Like, nobody has a truck full of gear, unless you're Metallica type thing.
Right.
You're flying in to play at probably such and such casino, more often than not, or a festival, backline provided. Man, if you're a bass player, Steinberger bass. Fits in the overhead. You get one of those nifty quality gig bags that are better than a road case, and done.
Yep.
And they show up with their little Trans amp, like Tech 21 Trans amp. There you go. They're going to sound amazing anyway. Oh, here's my DI. For fuck's sakes. A guitar player schlepping in guitar, pedal board.
Yeah. How the times have changed, for sure.
Even Cliff Williams from AC/DC was playing a Steinberger bass for a while.
Yeah, the Trans-Trem, though, I think, now don't quote me, but there was a statement from Ned when he saw what Ed was doing with it. And he's like, he's the only one that's really taken it and done what I had envisioned somebody doing with it. There were other players that would lock it into a different, like a capo and just leave it there. But what Ed was doing with it, changing, during the song and doing different stuff and effects with it. Cool.
Well, yeah, look how many songs, like the last verse, they'll move it up a key for the last verse. In a lot of songs, traditionally, that was the thing. The tempo goes up, the key goes up. Except now, you can play the same chords, but and then great idea.
Yep. I tease on my show a lot of times. Me and John have talked about it. And we're like, Eddie's already done all of the riffs that you could possibly do with a Trans-Trem. There's no good ones left. Because he did everything that he does is just freaking cool on it.
Yeah, it's almost like you got to put it in the hands of like somebody that's so not Eddie in many, like just a totally different orbit. And here, have fun. What do you think? Hit me up in a week.
Somebody had mentioned earlier that they couldn't believe that it hadn't taken off more than it did. I think that it just, the exposure of it wasn't there. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of times too. Sometimes this will be my guitar. If I want to try out some amps or something at Guitar Center, I'll throw this, in the car. It's a banger guitar. It's got some holes in it, and I don't care if it gets banged around. So I'll throw it in the car and I'll take it. I'll test out some amps or something, and inevitably somebody will come over and go, "What are you doing with that guitar?" Like, what do you mean? And they're like, "Why? How is it? Am I making that sound? Are you? What is it?" And I'll explain that it's got a Trans-Trem on it. And they go, "When was that invented? Is that new?"
Yeah.
Guys that have been playing.
Wonderful time known as the 80s.
Guys that have been playing for years, too. They're like, I had no idea that was out there. So a lot of people just don't know about it.
Yeah. Well, what's the thing? Like, okay, if you're not I was going to say if you're not a Van Halen fan, but no, if you're not a Van Halen fan, but also not a gearhead, too, because to a lot of people, they just hear it's all the same. A whammy bar is a whammy bar. They won't hear what we hear, we'll say, as an educated ear per se. But even as kids, and maybe that's how we end up being guitar players, because even as kids, we heard, we're like, hey, what's that? Like, the first time you heard Summer Nights, you're like, what the fuck's going on there?
Yes. Yep. And even when I watched Live Without a Net the first time, I'm like, what the heck is that little guitar and what is he doing? Didn't understand how he was doing it. I remember
seeing the guitar and I thought, okay, I know the guitar because, again, there was, I want to say, like, more pop bands. Like, if you were the touring guitar player for, say, the Thompson Twins, you had a Steinberger. Like keyboard pop bands, the guitar player would have a Steinberger. Maybe that's why, because they're like, I don't want to be associated with like that. It's sort of like when grunge hit, right? And new metal, like all of a sudden everyone had to put away all their shredder guitars and you had to go back to play, a Fender or something because you couldn't show up. They had to have the right guitar for the gig, and maybe that's part of it. I don't know.
Yeah, who knows? I do remember that the way that I figured it out was I watched Live Without a Net, and I was like, that song Summer Nights is just cool. Whatever he's doing, that's cool. I want to learn how to play that. So I think I went and I bought a music book for 5150, and in the very top it says that a Steinberger electric guitar with a specialized Trans-Trem bridge which transposes the keys of the guitar was used for this song. And that was my first introduction to, okay, he's actually using something on the guitar that's allowing him to do that. Right. And started looking into it and then figured it out from there. And then obviously I've been wanting one ever since I was a kid, but I would always, you may have seen the capo trick that I do. That's how I learned Summer Nights is I would put a capo on the 3rd fret and then I would play it, in the proper chording position.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd slide the capo off. So when I could finally afford to get a guitar with a Trans-Trem, I already knew all the, the chord shapes.
I'm old enough to, this was a game changer when this style capo came out.
Yes.
Also, because I like my dad, he's one guitar, one amp, straight in. That gear wasn't the thing to him. But when we were watching like Nashville Tonight, and all of a sudden the guy's got one of these on the guitar, and actually it wasn't even on the guitar; it was just on the headstock. He's like, "What's that? What's that?" Yep. And I remember we went to the meeting. He goes, "We need those." I'm like, "Fucking right, we do that." I'm not even sure. I'm like, "What?" Because previous capos, it was like putting vice grips on and
the old wrap around, snap it down.
Yep. Hassle. 10 minutes.
Yep.
And then we went to the music store, and my dad's like, "Need one of those Nashville capos," and that's all he knew it as. And fortunately, because we're morons as guitar players, he was able to call their distributor and just ask for a Nashville, and they knew what it was, basically, because I think probably every music store was calling, going, "Hey, what are those?"
Yeah, we need that. We need it. Yep. Frame us with the Trans-Trem. Michael Krause, I'd like to see Adrian Legg use a Trans-Trem. The guy put banjo tuners in his Ovation. I would like to see some new players, get their hands on one and see what they could do with it for sure.
Yeah. I think it would be nicer. Yeah, it was probably the more distribution when there was probably not enough dealers were selling them to get them into enough hands to get them into the secondary market. Where there's just a ton of them.
You know
it's
what I think?
Parker Flies. It's like Parker Flies were when they came out. I'm like, whoa. This is new. It reminded me of Steinberger all over again, but in the 90s. And again, more people didn't play them, and they have a following. But
you know what I think would do it this day and age is if Wolfgang Van Halen wrote a song with his dad's Steinberger guitar, and people would then be like, "What is he doing? What is that?" So come on, Wolfie, you can do it. Reintroduce everybody. Yeah. I'm sure there's several of them sitting there.
Exactly. Yeah,
I know that
Eddie was kind of hard on gear. I'm sure he had at least one or two.
Well, I know for sure that he had two GL2Ts.
Sure.
He had.
He would have a backup for touring, right?
Right. He had a 12-string, whatever that nomenclature would have been, and then I know that he had at least one of these, possibly two of these. Just plain white.
Right. Right.
So yeah, I'm sure that there's several of them that he has access to. Richard Clark has used a rubber band and a pencil.
Wolfgang's secretly watching the chat going like this. "Fuck you, Ryan. I found them. They're all in pieces. Dad left them all in fucking pieces." So you're like,
right? They're all scattered around. No, I know for a fact
they're in milk crates.
I know that the GL2T was rebuilt, and there was plans for him to start using that again. So I know for a fact that one is probably in good shape. That's funny. A rubber band and a pencil for a capo. You do what you got to do.
Exactly. See, I told you topics would just be all over the place tonight. No set agenda.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like our show. We just hit live and go.
Right.
When
will I be on Ryan's show to jam? Well, I'd have to set up an interface for that, Blue Mox.
Ben has actually been on our show before. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah.
But we were able to get him through pretty good.
Yeah, I didn't. We tried another time playing to a backing track, but the problem was I couldn't hear myself because of the volume that you guys play at, basically.
Right.
Because I remember I had the headphones on, which was canceling out my sound because I can't live monitor without an interface. And Trevor's like, "Wow, that was great." I'm like, "Really?" He says, "Why?" I'm like, "I can't hear myself."
Yeah,
I was all feel and no memory. He's like, really? I was like, well, also it was a fucking minor pentatonic, and I was just boxing it.
Yeah.
He was still new at the time, right? He didn't know.
That's right, John. It'd be fun to have Ben on again for sure. Yeah, open invitation, man. Just let us know.
Yeah, come on, play a piece. Geez, I have to get my chops back in shape. My show, I just play like, verse, chorus. That's good. You got the gist of it. And people are like, yeah, was it this? If that's what you heard, sure. Yeah, let's go with that. Sure.
Just the most popular parts. That's all you need.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I do with most of the Trans-Trem tunes. I just play little pieces of them. Just enough that you know what they are.
See, now everyone's egging me on. I know. I think I did play Greasy Weasel when I was on. I believe. I may have.
Joe says, yes, you should go on. Yep. Everybody's peer pressuring you now.
I know. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate that.
So what is this the year of for you, Ben? I know you do the year of the chorus pedal, the year of the amplification.
I'm hoping it'll be the year of the Les Paul by the end of the year.
All right. You got your eye on a Murphy Lab?
No. Well, yes, but no. I realized, there's a hole there. And like my J Tercer filled it to a point, because I did bond with that, even though it was a cheap little piece of crap. I played that thing until it's worn out. Like, it needs a nut, it needs frets. Like, literally the nut, there's no nut action anymore because the strings are vibrating all the way through the nut.
Wow.
And I'm just like, you know what? It was a $175 guitar. It's just retired. So now I need a Les Paul, because Explorers don't sound like Les Pauls. They sort of do, but they're not quite the same. That's why I got an Explorer, because it sounded different than a Les Paul, which Bo has been saying for a while, that you need an Explorer. I'm just saying. I'm like, yeah, I'm sure Trev's been mentioning that, Bo, over the years. Maybe once or twice it's come up. But yeah, I played a handful, and that's the great thing about Les Pauls is you can put 10 of them in a row. They're all going to play different. They're all going to sound. There's going to be something different about all of them.
Yep.
And when I find the right one, hopefully, I'll have the money at the time. But because, as you know, they're not cheap. But once the estate is settled for my father, we're selling the car, which is Buddy's already put a down payment on it. So then, funny enough, my cut is basically the cost of Les Paul. That's what I'm saying, Ryan.
Right. Yeah.
Because karma is real. So I'm like, well.
So it'll happen.
I think my dad would be okay with me turning one toy into a different toy.
Absolutely.
That's right. So Ryan has a shark, which is Explorer adjacent. It is. It's part of the fan.
Yeah, it's a Explorer shaped object. Yes.
Yeah.
And I also have a Star guitar, which is kind of in the same family, I guess, a little bit, maybe.
It has Dane Electrohead's neck on it.
That's true.
Eddie, I like them. I don't care, Eddie. They're weird. They're Dane Electroheads. Stop. He glued wings on some of them and stuff. He tried.
Mm-hmm. So what model of Les Paul are you gelling with the most? Out of
of course, when I played a Murphy Lab, that was that took me a long time to get over that experience. Yeah. But I found there's a couple custom shops in the L&M database, which, for those who don't know, Long McQuaid, I have access to their in-store database, and I can see how many are, there, and prices and such. And there's a few sitting in there priced well in various locations across Canada. I'm not mentioning because we have a lot of Canadians watching, but there is one custom shop that's it was 7,100. It's on for 4,100.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Which is a 58 reissue, which is kind of, I found last few years, the 58s, the necks aren't overly big.
They're
it's
little
59
fatter.
With a plain top instead of flame, and I'm like, I don't need flames. And my first electric guitar was a Les Paul with a plain top. So I'm
Mhm.
kind of, that checks that box. And
Yep.
so it's sitting in the store, and basically all I have to do is put $100 down on it to have it transferred to the local store, because then I can have them and beat them up even more on the price. Because
Yeah. Well, I think that in the past couple of years, you know, you're talking about different Les Pauls. You try 10 different ones, and you know, all of them are going to sound. All of them are you're going to sound different. But lately, within the past couple of years, whatever they've done, they have really, really picked up their game, because they have a lot more that I've been finding. And I'm like, holy crap, this one is just as great as this one over here.
Yeah, they used to be between a 7 and a 10, they're now an 8.5 to a 10. And I used to find a ton of finish flaws.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I find overspray on the binding on the neck. That was a big thing. Or runs in the paint. The amount of guitars I would hold it up, you know, as I always do for the thumbnail, and I'd see a run in the back.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, "Ooh, don't talk about that." You know, okay, you know.
Well, they've got the new model of the studio. Those things are just
the modern studio.
Yeah, those things are fantastic.
Yeah, they got the nice neck carve.
They got the car. Yep, there was one in Chattanooga Guitar Center that Andy took us to. That if I didn't have 3 other Les Pauls in here, that thing would have come home with me. It was absolutely fantastic, right. And it was what, $1,800 US, something like that. So
the other thing is a P90 Les Paul too.
Right,
they do a thing.
Yeah,
that is not the same as a humbucker, but it's not the same as other P90 guitars too. Like P90 Les Paul in particular has a certain honk to it. It's like kind of Les Paul, kind of Telly. That's the only way to describe it. There's a little Telly flavor put in there. And,
our Guitar Center in Atlanta has a platinum room.
Sessions, that's it, Bo. You're right.
Studio Sessions. Yeah.
I remember I did the blue one that everyone's all hot and horny about, and I get it.
They got another one that's come out. It doesn't have the neck carve on the bottom, but it's called the Blackout, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
It's Studio Blackout. There's like
I don't think I've tried that one yet.
Military green, and then there's a black one, I think, as well. But the platinum room at our Guitar Center's got, the Sewer guitars, your Ernie Ball Music Mans, your Les Paul, Murphy Labs, and all that. And they have, some vintage gear in there as well. And there was, I think it was a 70-something deluxe pancake body with the P90s.
That was what my first guitar was, a deluxe, which had the mini hums, 72.
Yeah.
It weighed so much.
And
high school band couldn't play that more than 2 songs.
I was going to say, I picked it up and it weighed probably 20 pounds. Yeah. Heavy stuff.
And then I bought a Strat, and I'm like, oh, I can stand up straight again. And that's one of the reasons I kept the Strat and got rid of the Les Paul. Even though I'm not a Strat player, really, like compared to a Les Paul, but it was like my dad said, like, which one has more various, like, how many tones can you get out of Les Paul as opposed to a Strat? And it's like, well, the Les Paul really does one thing, but it does it well.
How many usable tones can you get out of the guitar?
Whereas the Strat, much more versatile in that respect. So
depending on what you're playing and the type of music.
Shouldn't have got rid of that Les Paul, because I got rid of it right before the market exploded.
Mm-hmm. Mean Joe is asking, what Gibson pickups do I prefer? I gotta say that whatever is in this 59 reissue custom, I think it's what do they call it? The custom buckers.
Custom buckers,
yeah.
Which I think I just want to say they're like a PAF style, but a touch hotter.
I don't think that they're potted, but I don't get any squeal or anything out of them. They're just fantastic. Yeah, for sure.
Let's say if you keep the winds low, they don't need to be potted. You wind them up like a Wolfgang pickup. They need all the help they can get.
Yeah, for sure. Gibson's quality control changed for the better. Yeah, I've been seeing
it's weird.
Sure.
flipped about 3 years ago, I want to say, where Gibson and Fender flipped. All of a sudden, Fender is putting out pieces of shit. Like, I still remember, again, holding up for the thumbnail, a Strat, Ryan, and I'm looking at it, and the fucking trim cover's backwards. Which I didn't, like, I always looked at it thinking, I think those holes lined up. I never tried it, but I'm like, how? Like, obviously, they strung the guitar at the factory, then put the cover on.
You almost have to think, okay, maybe that happened here at the guitar store. Unless it came straight out of the box when you saw it.
Yeah, it was a new arrival. Yeah.
Wow.
Because, and unfortunately, these guys here, due to attrition, because it got to the point where when 75% of the staff kind of knew what they were doing, they're like, you know what? Let's push out the other people. They just made their life hell, basically. Yeah. And they made a point because you have to play an instrument to work there. But, I played an oboe in high school band, 10 years ago doesn't cut it. Now they want like I want to say at least, like, I know everybody plays something, but half the staff are even gigging to some extent. Like, and they're young guys in their 20s. That there's a couple of guys that are into gear, like you can tell they're pedal heads and stuff. And then like one guy, Mason, who I met a year ago, he started working there 6 months ago. He's just out of college, decided to work in a music store. He's one of these guys playing it like at the local brewery or pub most Saturdays, most Fridays, the 7 to 9 solo acoustic through a pedal board, which is what caught my attention. Because I was at the customer appreciation event, which is this Saturday. But last year, he's playing solo acoustic. You hear it in the background. It's like, whatever, someone playing acoustic guitar. Cool. And then he kicked in a phaser, and I'm like, whoa, time out. I'm like, I'm the phaser guy. You let alone an acoustic. And I'm like, whoa.
Did he have it in front or in the effects loop?
And he got off stage, and he came up and he recognized me, and which was hilarious. And I said, did you kick in a phaser? He's like, yeah, wasn't that cool? I'm like, damn straight away. He goes, you want to see my pedal board? I'm like, yes, I do, kid.
Yeah. Cool.
And he started working there, and he's just like, yeah, whatever you need, let me know.
What was that piece of gear that they had out for a while for? They may still have it, but it was, you take it and I think you either put it on the back of the guitar or you put it inside of it, and it would add like delay and stuff to your acoustic guitar.
Tonewood amp.
Tonewood.
Yeah. Those things were insane. I wanted one of those, but I said, yeah, you can add chorus. I'm like, how? What? Like, it's best not to know. All I know is it's a magical box that's full of voodoo.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't plug into anything, but I hear these effects, and they're coming out the sound hole.
Right. Yeah.
And you're like, how? Chorus and delay, like you say, reverb. Like, what the hell? Tonewood. I want to say those were Tonewood amps.
Yeah, I saw a video or something, but I didn't have enough use for it at the time for anything I was doing.
Now I want one of those again. Thanks, Ryan.
There you go.
I'm good on gear. Don't need anything. Now I need a guitar to put it in. Great.
Got to find one of those.
Yeah.
So I
am kind of looking for an acoustic guitar too, which is why I got to beat them up on the price of Les Paul. So I
recommend Taylor or Martin. Those are good brands.
Yeah. See, that's a problem. I'm spoiled. I've got a vintage Martin that I grew up since I started playing. I borrowed my dad's to start on, and growing up, listen to Pink Floyd. That's all D28. For the most part, and for me it was David Gilmour and Neil Young, and D28 all over that. So that's my sound. I put out 2 Larrivee demos there last week. We were doing the Water Buffalo meeting yesterday, and people were like, what do you think? I'm like, great guitar, they're $4,000 a piece, Canadian, great guitars. They're like, so you think we get one? No, they got mahogany sides and back. So I'm like, I need rosewood. Sorry,
right.
I'm a snob. Yep. So yeah, I'm screwed in that respect.
Michael Krause says it's a speaker magnet. Your guitar becomes the speaker cone. Interesting.
Okay.
Custom Buckers have Alnico 3 and about 8K DC resistance. Yeah,
just a little hotter than your 7.5, which is kind of the idea of what a PAF was.
Tom says we're in luck. The Tonewood 2 is in the works.
Great.
Have to be watching Andertons for the video for that, so they can make it sound horrible.
I hate that.
No, Chris, I have never owned a Parker. I've played a few, and I've wanted to own a Parker, but I've never really had that much of a need to have one. So I think they're cool. I would love to have one, but no, I've never owned one.
Yeah, Bo mentions the Builder's Edition Taylors. Yeah, that's like a custom shop Martin. It's the same idea.
I think he might be talking about the less expensive ones. They came out with a new line, and I think it's called the Builder's Edition, and they're a little more affordable.
Because I remember playing one a few years ago that was a Builder's Edition, where literally the dude who builds the guitar signs the label inside. I'm like, holy crap! Because it says built by, then his name typed out, and then his signature underneath. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, maybe he's talking about a different thing then. But I'd heard that they were coming out with a new line of more affordable entry-level Taylors. Zach says the Tonewood amp, there's an expiration that comes with it that you mount inside the guitar and has magnets. Not sure it attaches to the back of the guitar.
Hey, Paul McNary. Thanks.
What's up, Paul? Thank you, man.
Right on. Well, we'll go a little while longer here, folks. We've got some great conversation going on. Apparently, I'll see Zach up possibly on Saturday at the customer appreciation event. I'm going to go there, I think, a little later in the day, Zach, because my niece's boyfriend's band is apparently playing there. So I should check them out, apparently.
So Zach is up near Toronto area. You're not too far.
Zach used to be near Toronto, and then he literally, about not long after I moved into this house, he moved into a new subdivision that was built next door to my old house.
Oh, wow. So you guys are practically
neighbors. Had I not moved, we would have been neighbors, basically walking distance from each other.
Wow. Very cool.
Yeah. Because he started explaining where he goes, oh yeah, it's a new build. I'm like, okay, well they're building a lot in this area. And he's like, oh yeah, and the Walmart's just. I'm like, oh yeah. I'm like, so if you go to this end, does it turn into a dirt road? He's like, yeah. How'd you know? Like, because the house on the left used to be mine.
Right. Now, was Zach in the Water Buffalo earlier?
Oh yeah.
Did you get to see his new telly? He showing that?
I did. The one my uncle. I think I'm going to sell his telly. He goes, I don't think you are, Uncle. Mine.
Right.
Yeah.
He was telling us about it in the chat over on our show tonight.
Well, it's pretty. Yeah, double bound, burst.
Yeah.
Hey, Ted.
Sound like a new one. Anti DIY HVAC. Right on, man.
Good to see Ted in here. Yeah, Zach showed off 2 tellies and
right on, man.
His 2 acoustics as well. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, I remember Zach had showed us several of his acoustics. Some of them handmade, I guess, by his uncle. Mm-hmm. Very cool.
Nice to see Ryan.
What do you mean, John? You don't get to see the real me?
Great to see Ryan when he's not playing. Whoa. Right. Jeez.
The
thing is, he's probably got a backing track going the whole fucking show, and he's sitting there noodling.
Yeah.
Let's look at me. I don't have to trade off with anybody. I'm playing all the time.
Yeah. Now he means with me, opening up and sharing my emotions as I'm here.
You didn't see the telly, Bo? He showed off 2 of them. He had the burst and then the blonde with the blackguard. I didn't had a telly the blonde with the blackguard because I'm like, isn't that kind of the standard for a telly, blonde with a blackguard?
Marshall Murray's telly was in his cart and it went up $50 overnight. Snooze, you lose, I guess.
Yep. Dang.
John says it's just different.
That's what she said.
Everyone needs a telly. Everyone needs an Explorer. Everyone needs a Trans-Trem, but they're like hen teeth to find.
Well, but that's okay. Everybody doesn't need a Trans-Trem. because then, everybody would be on doing shows with one.
Well, there's that.
So
Yeah,
I'm kind of unique in the aspect that
this is true.
I think I'm the only one that does any of that.
Well, there's another guy that owns one, but he goes live once every 2 months, maybe 3 months, 4 months.
You talking about the old Throb Johnson?
I may be talking to you, Rod Johnson. Rob Ron, who I've met. Nice guy. Hell of a guy. Hell of a nice guy, actually.
Yeah, I'm looking at doing some more traveling this year. So, me and Randy jumped in and we went up to meet Andy Carson, like I mentioned.
Right.
Maybe next weekend we might be going to meet Charles Green, maybe even Fruitcake Tony if he can make the trip.
Because Fruitcake come down the other way. Because Atlanta to Charlotte's not that
far, but
no.
I may want to start booking some trips and going up, maybe see Rob Johnson and maybe flying up and seeing John, and so maybe some traveling, some escapades on the channel, that type of thing. So
nice.
Start to meet some of these people in person. That's right.
I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty fucking cool when it happens.
Yeah.
Whatever the context is, how far apart are you and Randy? I know you're not that far apart, obviously.
No, we typically will meet at like the Atlanta Guitar Center, which is 40 minutes for me and 40 minutes for him. So, we cut the distance in half.
Nice.
And obviously, at some point I'm going to have to make a trip to Bo Guitar Man 45's, new Shangri-La festival, festivity grounds. And
I called a commune.
There we go. Yeah, Trev has a link there for a video that I've got with kind of basically what I went over tonight, but I'm just over there pointing to it.
Nice.
So Wayne says, any thoughts on the Transcale Steinberger Synapse? Yes. No, thank you. I mean, that literally is a capo that you just move. And the main reasons that I don't like it is because guitar for me is a lot about the feel.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have a channel going down the neck that a capo actually rolls in,
and
you feel that with your hand as you're playing.
Yeah, no thanks.
No, thank you. I mean, a cool idea. And a lot of them were baritone as well, so you could, drop the thing way down.
Oh, great. Now Matt just perked up. Baritone?
Right. Yeah. They had one for sale at Atlanta Guitar Center, and I messed around with it a bit, and I was like, nah, not for me.
Actually, Matt's probably off searching for the one baritone that Ned Steinberger built.
So, yeah, definitely not for me. I'm kind of like, a lot of times the original thing is better. You may come out, Coke 2. No, thank you. Let me have Coke Classic, original Coke. Trans-Trem 2. No, thank you. Let me have the original one.
Yeah, there very seldom does the reissue excel past in this business. Yeah.
That's right. Glenn Michael Thompson. Space between the fingerboard and the neck feels awful. It does. It does. I mean, you think that, fret sprout drives you crazy. Right. Wait till you got a crater right there and you feel that.
Right.
Yeah. So, not for me. Zach's got an uncle's friend that's building guitars. Cool.
Yeah, Stuckless. They are nice guitars. I got to see them in person, but unfortunately, Zach's a lefty, so I couldn't play them.
Well, you could restring them just real quick, change the nut, restring.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure he'd love me doing that. Yeah, well, we were at the Long McQuaid. Good, yeah, just took it over to the workbench.
Yeah.
Knocked that nut out.
Isn't it strange, though, left-handed guitar, you're actually playing it with most people's dominant right hand, Why is it that a right-hander cannot make a bar chord or play? Have you ever tried to do that? Play a left-handed guitar?
Yeah, I taught a left-hand player once, and it was hard enough just to tune the thing.
Right.
It was so foreign. Like I ended up just flipping it upside down and just tuning it upside down because at least that your hands knew what to do. This one can block. This one can twist knob.
Right. But why is that? I mean, that's the dominant hand that I do everything.
Right?
Like
I play right-handed, but I'm a left-handed player, and I'm glad I do But then that's why I'm always pulling chords out of tune. I think because I've got such a hard grip. Plus, I learned how to play on guitars with no frets, so you had to fret hard because otherwise it would buzz because there was no fret height.
I guess there's some people out there that are ambidextrous that they could play two at the same time. What's that one guitar player's name that had the four neck?
Michelangelo Beadio.
Yes, that's him. He was in a contest with Steve Vai, I guess, for the guitars with the most necks. Zach says he would have been right-handed, but his uncle put the guitar on my hands left-handed when I was little.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's all what you learn.
Yeah, I picked it up playing it right-handed just because everybody I'd ever seen, like, I'm like outside of Hendrix, I couldn't even think of a lefty player, growing up type thing. Hey, Michael Torin.
What is going on, Michael Turin? That's the dude with all the gear.
We're due for a hang, my friend. It's good to see you.
He would be the guy I need to ask if he's got a spare Lexicon PCM 70 floating around that he would be willing to sell.
If anyone has a spare,
he
either knows where it is or has it.
Yep. I'd be curious to know who works on his rack gear as well, because my PCM 70, the knob, I have to have it cranked all the way up for it to maintain the volume. And then every now and again, it'll glitch back and it'll be like way over volume. So I got to go and turn that down. So I'm either looking for a spare or somebody to work on them.
Yes, one.
Just one. Dang it.
Right.
Yeah, I asked that question on Tone Talk one time. I said, who works on this stuff? And Friedman was like,
crickets.
I don't know. So
I wonder if Lawrence would. Like he should be able to, but it'd be more time for him, I think. Question of time. It's not as opposed to ability.
Yeah.
He uses a local shop for stuff he can't do.
At least he's got somebody local.
Well, he is in the promised land when it comes to gear.
This is true. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I'm sure the Atlanta gear market, the used market is decent, but nothing sadder. I made the mistake of browsing Craigslist while I was staying with JJ during NAMM one year and just seeing Orange County, California, what's available. Right. It's like you swear all the gear ended up there. Like all of it.
Yep.
That's why JJ's, I got into this, brother, and I found this and this and this. And I'm like, come on.
So Bo is asking why the 70 and not the 80 or the 90. Well, if you want to be a true aficionado with Eddie's tone, he used the 70. And I believe that was the only one that had the mono signal in and a stereo out. I don't think the 80 or the 90 did that. And there's just got a certain thing about it on the 70. That's what he used for Cathedral. So, I mean, it just works.
Checks Craigslist when he travels, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're always traveling, my friend.
I always do a music go round is a spot that we have here. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that there's several across the U.S. So every few weekends, I'll pull them up and I'll do a search for Steinberger, I do a search for Lexicon, and I do a search for Eventide.
Right.
Because they're big on some of the older rack gear.
Sure. Which is and there's a lot of rack gear in that neck of the woods. Like there's been a long history of studios and home studios. And,
yes.
That's the one good thing about being in a market with a vibrant music community is every time one of us idiots got a record, I'm building a whole studio. It's like, I'm getting all the outboard gear, and then their wife leaves them, and then they got to sell it all, and it's like,
It is getting to a point where a lot of it is more and more scarce, though. You know, it used to be you can go on Reverb and there'd be 20 of something, and now it's like 4, and they're over in Italy, you know,
Right.
and it costs
Thanks,
$500
go
to ship it.
massive.
Yeah. Right. He's got it all.
Yeah.
Michael seems to think that any place that repairs synths and stuff could work on a Lexicon. Well, they may be able to work on it, but they may not be familiar with it because of the age. That might be a thing. Who knows?
Good question. Oh, well, wouldn't you have to? Yeah, you'd have to remove or fill in the saddle or the bridge and re-drill the saddle, Joe, to go from right to a lefty on an acoustic, because it's an angled bridge, and you'd have to
Have to flip
build that. I've seen it done. It's a hassle. I don't have that kind of preciseness with a router. There we go. There's a new trough for saddle to sit in. Oof. No thanks. That's a lot of work. What with a Fender acoustic of all things? Really? It's not like Fender makes any high-end acoustics.
Yeah.
Buy a lefty.
What's one here too, Bo? You talking about like a music go round? Not as friendly.
They probably know who you are, Bo. That's why they won't lowball anything. They know them. Synth Cube, Michael Krause. I'm not sure. Maybe. Especially if they deal with old gear. That's for sure. Nice. We're approaching the top of the hour here. Jeez, 2 hours after doing your show too. Oof.
Yeah, it's been a marathon tonight, man.
Right?
Seems like we just started talking though. It's been 2 hours already, huh?
That's the sign of a good hang.
Yeah, man.
Oh, there's music go around as well for Bo.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're a lot of times they don't have the best prices and they don't like to deal, but if they got a piece of gear that's pretty rare, I mean, you can't haggle very much.
This is true. This is true. Been there. I hate that. I'm just like, well, I can't really wiggle anymore. Fine. I'm looking at you, Waza Dimension C pedal.
A lot of times too, I've found that they're like, well, we really don't want to deal on the price unless you got something to trade. You know, they're looking for more gear to come in.
Right.
Most underrated pedal.
Is there one in today's day and age?
Tuner pedal.
Yeah. More people should use it.
Yes. Most underrated pedal. I don't know. I don't use a whole lot of pedals, so I don't think that I would be the best to answer that question.
I don't know. I'm going to go with the diamond compressor. It's well known and good, but not that well known, but it's really good. And those who know. I'm going to go with the diamond compressor. So
is he asking specifically for a brand or just a generic compressor?
No, I'm going to go with that's a specific pedal. I'll go with that. So for those who don't know, Ryan's Sunday Community Jam is going to move to Saturday night, prime time, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. So speaking of rack gear, what are your thoughts on these Synergy modules? I'm not that big a fan myself. Ryan, you know more about them just by osmosis. Like
the 2CP Dr. Z and the Tone King Imperial Mark II. I haven't tried any of those. The only ones that I've tried in my unit are the, I guess it's the BBBE What's the other one I got? The SLO2, and there was another one I think that I tried. I can't remember. But yeah, I haven't tried those specific modules. Randy and Jimmy are the more Synergy users.
Mm-hmm.
I did
They
find
seem to like it.
Yeah, I did find that the Synergy unit, like those guys, had the best feel to it. You know, when I was trying to set up the B rig over there, and a lot of potential with that Synergy rig for sure. But nothing feels like a real rig.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Bo probably has all the modules.
Do you still have all of them, Bo? Because there's been several that have come out in the last year or two.
Mm-hmm.
I know you used to have all of them.
There was a new one that Randy had tried to use, and when it got delivered,
money than mine. I'm just saying.
The one that Randy had got wouldn't fit. They had actually moved the thing. It was a misprint of the board or something, and it wouldn't fit into his Synergy unit. Yeah. So he just sent it back. So screw it.
Crazy. So as well as the Saturday night jam, we'll call it temporarily. We also have Trans-Trem Thursdays, folks. Mm-hmm. Pretty cool. As well as Guitarsenal on Tuesdays.
That's right.
Which is all kinds of fun. Check it out, folks. If you haven't already, Charles has been putting the link in the chat repeatedly. If you haven't clicked it, click it. It's in the description as well.
Just go over there and click subscribe and then hit the notification. It's free.
Yeah, it doesn't cost a thing. Yeah, well, this has been quite the fun hang.
Yeah, we've done everything but a tone sample.
Well, we should do a tone sample because people have been asking about the rig, so maybe they should do the rig for it.
Let me give a little. I'll keep off of copyrighted stuff just long enough so that.
Yep. Hey, there's brother Tom. By the way, Tom, I didn't answer your text because I'm busy doing a show. That's why I didn't answer your text. Busy doing a show.
So we'll do a tone sample of the rig and the Steinberger to show what it'll do. So let's see. See, there's that muscle memory we were talking about.
Cue the Simmons drums.
Right? So there's just a quick demo of the rig and the Trans-Trem, what it can do.
Very cool. All right, we'll go with Joe's final question. Ryan, if you're playing a lot of gigs, so I like a lot, because they're like, you're like, I got a one off. I'm bringing the wet, dry, wet. But if you got a lot of gigs, you're like, my back ain't, all right.
Yep. Well, see, that's the thing is I'm not going to be playing a lot of gigs. I've way past that time of going out and playing. But if I were to start playing in a band and doing some gigs again, I would make a smaller version of a wet, dry, wet rig. I don't care about these Axe effects and any pedals and all that kind of stuff. I want a real amp. I've got a JJ Junior back there that's 20 watts. Where is it? Right over here.
They're great.
And I can get a small 1x12 and then another 1x12 right next to it. And I could make a mini wet, dry, wet rig. I could actually then mic it over into the Rodecaster Pro 2 and then send that signal to front of house. So I would have monitoring on stage, and it would be a very, very small, compact wet, dry, wet. So that's exactly what I would do.
I dig it. And I just show up with my regular rig anyways, because that's what I do.
Right.
I feel sorry for if I'm ever in a band with another guitar player. Sorry! No room in the spectrum for you.
Mm-hmm. I'm taking all of
Why does your tone have to be so huge? Because that's the way it is.
Yeah. you know, Chris, the Quad Cortex, the Axifex FM3, all that's great, but just not for me. I prefer a real amp.
Yep, same. I like to play at pants shaking volume. I like to have the speakers behind me. Same way, like, as much as I hate being near a drummer every time he ever touched a cymbal, I kind of like that standing in front of a drummer and he'd hit that kick and I could feel it hitting me in the back.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah. Well, we should definitely do this again.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. And thanks everybody that tuned in tonight. Of course, Ryan, hold the line here. Well, you know how this works. He's not new at this anymore. He's a veteran of the scene. He's raised the bar. It's been a fun time. Thanks everybody that tuned in tonight. I will be back tomorrow night with Connect Some Guitars. I'll play some guitar. I'll answer some questions. We'll show some bad album covers even. Why not? And give away some channel memberships because we can. So we will. Because we can. Sure.
Well, again,
Bo tried a high watt on Thursday and fell in love with it. Yeah, I know. High watts are nice.
Again, Ben, thanks for having me. Thanks for the invite. I enjoyed hanging out. Everybody in the chat had a great time. Appreciate everybody participating. If
you haven't already, please hit the like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. And as always, hold those doors open. Oh, let Ryan in. Hey, he's traveling. Let him in ahead of you in traffic. He's traveling so he can travel further, faster. That's the way it works. Be good to each other, because, karma is real. Ooh. Happy tone chasing. And, of course, don't litter.